Iraj Khodadoost, I don't know if he wanted me to say doctor because he's humble about it, but I can't help saying Dr. Iraj Khodadoost. Was born in Tehran, Iran, came to the U.S. at the age of 19 to pursue higher ed. And he has all three of his degrees, including his doctoral, in the fields of accounting, industrial management, public administration. So he has navigated the waters of both brain hemispheres very successfully. Worked in financial management for 10 years. I think most importantly, being a member of the Baha'i faith, he sees it as a duty and obligation, and I'm glad he does, to associate with people of all faiths in a spirit of amity and accord. Because in the words of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, the span of the earth is one country, and mankind its citizens, ye are all the leaves and branches of one tree. So just a beautiful quotation. And if you don't mind a reference to the song Imagine, it just reminds me of some of the lyrics of that wonderful, wonderful song. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Iraj.
How is everyone?
Good.
I'm so happy to be here this morning among you this bright morning, and beautiful faces that I see all across the room. Greg, there's a saying in Sufi tradition, you know about Sufis probably, and mystics, that love of praise is an attribute of the lower self. So I think when I send you information, I just sent you my resume, and that was when I was looking for a job. Now I'm not looking for a job. And in the words of Baha'u'llah, in man, in all of us as human beings, there are two natures: his spiritual or higher nature, and his material or lower nature. In one he approaches God, and in the other he lives for the world alone. So, when particularly you come to my age, all you're looking for is peace. And the way you can find peace is through becoming nothing. One of Baha'u'llah, the founder of Baha'i faith, has written about 100 volumes. He was in prison and exiled in different lands, from Iran when he was born, to Iraq where you see the turmoil today, all the way to Turkey, and finally to Akka, Israel, where he died as a prisoner, a period of 40 years. But for some reason, human beings, they usually kill some prophets, some manifestations, and they keep others. Fortunately, even though they tortured him all his life, they kept him alive. And during all this period of 40 years, he kept writing. Almost 100 volumes. And I encourage you to start reading some of his writings. What I wanted to begin with was actually this photograph. They say that a picture is worth what? 1,000 words. So this past weekend, I was looking for this particular photograph. If you have been to Chicago, some of you may have seen this temple, which is a Baha'i temple. Has anyone seen this Baha'i temple? Please raise it. Quite a few in this group. This temple, they began building it perhaps around, what is it, 100 years ago. The Abdu'l-Baha, the eldest son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of Baha'i faith, came to this country after being in prison with his father for over half a century. And in 1912 he came to this country, and the few Baha'is who were here, who just like you, were seeking this harmony and unity among the members of the human race. Baha'is had a vision of building these temples. They have built how many so far? I guess only 9. 90,000 more to go. Because Baha'u'llah wants us to have one of these temples, at least one of these temples, in every city and town across the planet. And I'll tell you what this vision is. This vision is similar to your vision. Many paths, one God. It goes a little further. And this is what I'm going to talk about. How it goes a little further. And Richard, I think your group and our group is going to merge one of these days. I don't know what it'll be. The next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, it's going to happen. Because I have been coming to your church, and maybe one of these days you can come to our. We have a church called Unity Church. They call it Unity Center in South Atlanta. Actually, this weekend I went there and I said, I'm looking for this photograph. Nobody seems to have it here. And they took it off of their wall and said that we have one. I said, how much? They said that this is our gift to your congregation. So this is our gift here, and I've seen that you have symbols of different religions, and hopefully you'll find a wall to put it. And I'll reframe it, because as I was bringing it to broke.
Thank you.
Now, I need to tell you a little bit more about this vision. All Baha'i temples across the globe have 9 sides, representing all the main religions of the world. Not that there are only 9, there could be more. But Hinduism and Buddhism and Zoroastrianism and Judaism and Christianity and Islam and Baha'i faith and so on. So any religion that is after peace, after kindness, after compassion, after oneness, right? This is the purpose of religion. That is what religion should be all about. As read that passage, religion should be a cause of love and unity. If it brings war, what you're seeing these days in the Middle East, right? If it brings wars and divisions and segregation and hatred, what does Baha'i faith say? We are better off without it. So any church and synagogue and mosque that you go and you see this kind of thing preached, love and harmony and unity, go there and participate there. I just cannot wait. Every Sunday when I go to Baha'i Center, they have the service 10 to 11. Sometimes when I come a little late. But I love to come to these different churches because the churches that teach unity and harmony and kindness and love. So, and then at every door of these temples, there's a passage from different religions. There's a passage. One other thing you will notice in these temples, there is no podium, and there is no preacher, and there's no one talking. Your church can gradually become like that. Now you need to open a few doors. And so they tell you, come through any door, sit anywhere you wish, and pick up any of these holy scriptures that you wish, and read it in any language that you wish, in your own peace and silence. So that's what it is. So next time you go to Chicago, North Chicago, Wilmette, Illinois, I hope that you go and visit this temple. I need to tell you something more about this temple. It's very intricate, right? This is one of the unique temples on the planet in this country. It took a period of almost 40 years to build it. 40 years. From 1910, 1912, when Abdu'l-Baha came to this country, until when? 1953. 40 years, 40 plus years. Now, part of it is because we had 2 wars, right? You and I were trying to build unity and peace, and they were fighting it out, cooking it out, like what you're still doing. But whether we are 10 or 20 or 100 people, we need to keep on doing it, right? Until, as Jesus says, there is peace on earth as it is in heaven, right? Until there is peace on earth and there is peace in heaven. I'm watching my time. I'll make sure that I'm staying with it. Now, so that's the temple. I'll tell you about another temple, and I'll go on to the other things I need to say. One of these temples was also built in India. It's called the Lotus Temple. And it's very similar in terms of the 9 sides and all of that. But, in India, over 1 billion people, And they have Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and Christians and Baha'is, you name it, you will see in that country over 1 billion people. And guess what? I just read recently, somewhere, that that temple is the most visited temple on the planet Earth. Just because of this concept. Come to any door, sit anywhere you wish, take in the scripture and read it. Because the essence of all religions is one and the same. So what you will see, they don't have this little symbol in Baha'i centers. But what you will see in Baha'u'llah's writings, I'd say they're slightly different. It's probably the same concept, but probably made a little bit more up to date. I say it is actually one religion, revealed to man through time, to give us the same basic fundamental truth, until one day we get it, that we are one. Till one day we get it. That there is no Muslim and Christian, Baha'i and Jew and all that. It's one religion. It's man who causes the division, right? It's man who causes division even within religions, right? I just remember things. Old age, I'll just say one at a time. The typical church that I used to go to, they would say either the preacher or unison, they would say, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Now, the unity churches I've gone to, I haven't heard that being said. I think there's a reason. That's my thinking. I think you guys, like Baha'is, think that the kingdom has come. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What is that kingdom? That kingdom is oneness. That kingdom is unity. That kingdom of understanding that there is one religion that has come to man through time, telling us the same basic truths. If we all get it, that is the kingdom. That's the Baha'i vision. So Baha'u'llah said, that's what I sent you that email the other day, this is the changeless faith of God. Eternal in the past, eternal in the future. Him who seeketh, let him attain it. Him who seeketh not, God is the self-subsisting. God is self-sufficing. So let's all continue working on that path of peace, but bring it even more closer to this oneness, to this absolute oneness. It's a little difficult in democracies, and in dictatorships it's worse. They tell you our way or the highway. So what do we need to do? What do you want to do? What you're doing, what we're doing, one part at a time. Baha'is do not preach. Actually, one of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is do not proselytize. Do not go and say that this is the way, you got to come this way or you go to hell and all that. And actually, as I'm saying this thing, I'll tell you the Baha'i teachings too. Baha'is do not believe in hell. I hope you don't either.
We don't.
It's all heaven. They believe, Baha'is believe, that as we leave this earth, we continue our journey toward God. And then Baha'u'llah says in one of these 100 volumes of books that he has, that for some, it takes a second to reach God. If you have lived a life of peace and harmony and kindness and compassion, it's a second. Reach Him, because that's what God is. If you don't, he says it may take hundreds of thousands of years, but you're still His children, right? We need to start someday. And the earliest we begin that journey, the easier it becomes. What was I supposed to talk about? I was supposed to talk about the history of the Baha'i faith, the teachings of the Baha'i faith, the social teachings of the Baha'i faith, prophecies, laws, and administration. So you need to invite me 6 times. I can't do it in 20 minutes. But I'll do what I can. So let me begin with Baha'u'llah's moral teachings. And Baha'u'llah says emphatically at the beginning of this small book, this is one of his books. Those of you who come to the second session, I have a gift for each one of you. I hope everyone comes. Including this, a few copies of this. It's called The Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. In this small book, which is about 160 passages, short passages, he says that is the essence of all the faiths of God brought up to date. So if you don't have time to read all the books of Hindus and Buddhists and Christians and Muslims and Jews and all the rest, please read this one. Should I share with you a few passages of it?
Please.
No, he says there's nothing wrong. This is the essence of all religions. But I have put it, he says in his words, in the garment of brevity. I have shortened it for you. So now that you guys don't have time, you can at least look at this. It begins with this. I love it so much. I memorized some of this. He says, O son of spirit, my first counsel is this. Possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. If you don't even read the rest of it, just try every day that you wake up and begin with our prayers to have a pure heart, to be gentle, to be kind, right? That's the essence of the essence. But I have to read you a few more. Because he says that the second command of God, all religions, what do you think it is? He says it's justice. Just read the first few lines of it. He says, the best beloved of all things in my sight, in the sight of God, is justice. Turn not away therefrom, if thou desirest me. And neglecting not that I may confide in thee. You know, one thing that people are crying, whether it's race riots or economic injustice, all of this is lack of justice, right? I was hearing a wonderful black preacher this morning speaking on NPR, saying that, you know, we have to pass beyond that period of civil rights, he was saying. We have to look for justice. It doesn't matter black and white and Hispanic and this and that. We have to look for justice. And that justice should come from within. We have to feel just inside that everything that we do is based on justice. Right? Am I brainwashed by somebody to think in this way? Or is it really the right path? And that brings us to the first principle of Baha'i faith, which is supposed to be in the social teaching, but I'll just say now, is independent search for truth, what I think the unity people do. Baha'i say that is the first principle. The time when the preacher, your preacher would tell you, or the Ayatollah tells you, or the rabbi tells you how to think is past. Maybe 2,000 years ago it was necessary. Most people were not educated. Somebody had to tell them how to think. Christians were not even allowed to read the Bible, right? For 1,500 plus years, right? The preacher would do it for you. But now we read it. But then we need to think, am I still brainwashed by my parents, or my church, by somebody, or am I thinking for myself? So that's the first social teaching of Baha'i faith. Independent search for truth. And he says, until we don't do it, we're not really free. We may say all these things about freedom, and we're free, and it's democracy, but here the mind is not free. It's brainwashed, right? So we have to start thinking for ourselves. You need to invite me again, because I'm going to read for you a few more of these things, which is repetition. It's the same. Clothed in the garment of brevity. O son of man, veiled in my immemorial being and the ancient eternity of my essence, I knew my love for thee. Therefore I created thee, having engraved in thee mine image, and revealed to thee my beauty. Man is made in the image of God. Jesus said it, right? Same thing. You know, the manifestation of God, we call the prophets, manifestation of God, tell us these things over and over again, and ask us to read prayers over and over again on a daily basis, so that this becomes a part of us, right? So that this message and all of that becomes a part of us. You're going to read it on your own. 150 passages of this. And then let me share with you, with a few minutes left, some of the social teachings of the Baha'i faith. And these social teachings, not all churches, but your church, I've been observing you, follow it. You have already reached this conclusion. Your Baha'i faith began in 1844, and your church began in 1893, something like that, 50 years after the Baha'i faith. But these social teachings, Baha'u'llah says the moral teachings are all the same, but social teachings change. And if you don't change it, you guys change it. You make your own church, right? The problem with that, according to Baha'u'llah, is that this thing is happening, and that is the spirit of the age. And if you force people to think in a particular way, they're not going to do it. One day they're going to burst, right, out of the cage. That becomes a cage, right? And do it on their own. But Baha'u'llah says that discipline, that order, in order for it to be systematic and not divisive, it has to be in this format of erecting from God. And you have that spirit in you. So it says, I'm just going to say one after the other because you all do it. As I said, independent search for truth. Compulsory education, so that we do not become imitators, right? We think for ourselves. Abolition of what he calls prejudices and imitations, so that we don't imitate a mullah and ayatollah, what is happening in the Middle East, right, these days. And perhaps in some churches who indoctrinate people to think in a particular way. So abolition of all prejudices and superstitions. Economic justice, right? It's not right for 100 people to have more than $1 billion each. They just don't know what to do with it. How many mansions do they want? Right? And how many cars? And all that. And then over 40, 50 million people in this country alone, being under poverty level. That's not just. There has to be a way to create a way of economic justice. So again, that list also goes on. But it begins with this concept of there's one God that you all agree with. I have to tell you a little bit more about the Baha'i concept of God, which I think is the same, and that what the purpose of religion was, but it was a little bit changed through time. Baha'u'llah says God himself is the unknowable essence. Nobody can understand the nature of God. We can know him what? Through the manifestation of God. Jesus, Buddha, Baha'u'llah. We can know him through them. Now those people who say they are theists, Baha'u'llah says it cannot be. You cannot just believe in God and don't believe in Jesus, don't believe in Buddha. They are the intermediaries between God and man. And then he makes it a little simpler as well. He says God, in other words, is nothing but the embodiment of virtues. That's why Baha'u'llah was also innovative in the 40 years that he was in prison. He made a new calendar, still the same 365 days, but he made it 19 months. So that they don't always have Sunday or Monday or Saturday for the day of worship and all that. So it rotates once in 19 days. And the name of each one, he gave a name to each one of these 19 months. Beauty and glory. And I remember the names in Arabic and Persian. Kamal and Jamal and all that. Which means, he says, these are the attributes of God. If you can embody attributes of God, you can become God-like. Because we are made in the image of God. So my time is running short. 2 minutes? Or 3 minutes?
You're cutting into your own time, so go as long as you want.
Okay, so 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes. According to my watch, 5 minutes. So, I'll tell you now, I had this list of prophecies I was going to read for you, all from the Bible. Now, what is interesting when you start searching the Baha'i faith? When you truly start searching the Baha'i faith, you come without doubt to understanding that there's really one religion. Because you will see prophecies in all of these religions that brings you to the same conclusion, that the kingdom has come and we are agents of that kingdom and we need to bring it to reality. This is what you see in all religions. Now, I remember I came to one of your training sessions, and I'm one of those slow students that doesn't learn. I have to come to training sessions one after another. And what I learned, and maybe if I'm mistaken, tell me right now, Richard, that you don't take the book of Revelation and all those prophecies very seriously. You take it metaphorically.
That's correct.
And you think that these are beautiful words for us to learn. But Baha'is take it seriously. Because they have studied it deeply from all religions, and they have all come to the conclusion that all of them come to mid-19th century, 1844. 1844. Remember the year 1844. What was happening in the decade before 1844 in US and in Europe and in the Middle East with regard to religious fervor? I'm sure Richard, who's a scholar in religion, knows about those things. I was going to say remember it, but you're not that old. But that there was religious fervor in mid-19th century all across the globe, particularly in the Islamic and Christian world. And what was that fervor? That the time has come. That Jesus will return in the glory of the Father, riding on a horse through the cloud, right? And will come. And we had a large group of Christians here. Many of them came to be known as what? As Millerites. Anyone knows about Millerites? I mean, they were preaching all across this country, from Ohio to South Carolina, and all the way that the kingdom is coming and be ready and all of that. Now, Allah says that the judgment day, or the day of it, the last day, is that date of renewal. That people have taken it at the last day and everything's going to collapse and this and that. But that's the time of renewal. And so these Christian scholars in the middle of 19th century had understood that it is the time of renewal. According to Dean Torrey, I believe his name is, there are 250 passages or verses of prophecies in the Bible alone, 250. So, you know, my wife arrived when she was here. She always tells me that I need to start looking for a job. And I'm looking for a job. But if you allow me to come here and not teach, Baha'is also don't have teachers. They tell us that we have, the best we can do is to become a tutor. And that tutor is just a facilitator. Because in the world of God, you don't know anything better than anybody else. So I want to introduce you to 3 books in particular, then I'll stop. Let me read 2 of these passages from, a couple from these 250 passages, a few passages on prophecies. The disciples asked, that's in Matthew, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And he answered, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto nations, and then shall the end come. I'm so glad that the Bible is being taught all across the globe. And by the way, do you know that there are billions of Christians all across the globe, and there are only a few millions Baha'is all across the globe. But in terms of the spread of the Baha'i faith is just like the spread of Christianity all across the world. So that has also has happened, right? The disciples asked again in Luke, when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentile, until the time of the Gentile be fulfilled. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. So we'll leave you with this thought. It's Luke chapter 21, verse 24 and 27. And this thought is that at that time, the middle of the 19th century, these Millerites, then when another 10, 20 years passed, they started making fun of them. Why didn't they come? You know, we were looking up there and on the cloud, and they didn't show up like that. And so they became, did you know what denomination that group became? They're still here, they're still waiting. What are they?
Seventh-day Adventists.
Seventh-day Adventists. They're Seventh-day Adventists. So after they gave up, that we really looked, and it was supposed to be then, but didn't happen, they made another denomination. Now the European group, they went all the way to Haifa, Israel, and Akkon. And because they thought that he would come from there. Right? You know, Mount Carmel, Mount God, and I brought you a picture of Mount God. Mount Carmel, where the cave of Elijah is. Are you going on your trip to Haifa, to Israel also?
No.
You're not going to visit. So, the Mount of God. And it so happens that as Baha'u'llah was being exiled from those, but also when you read the prophecies, read about Elam and Babylon and Syria, and that all come from the east. And this Baha'i said that these prophecies has been fulfilled in this man. It is your job and our job now to bring it to reality. So anyway, so we had the co-founders of the Baha'i faith were the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Bab was executed in Iran, and the followers hid his casket, and after 50 years they brought it to Israel, and Baha'u'llah is buried in Israel, and he was, at that time Israel was a jail, you know, Akkon was a fortified city and a jail for criminals, and they kept him there with criminals. But anyway, these German settlers, they're Mona Johnson, you see the red bricks here? The homes are still there. They came and went to that mountain with binoculars, looking for Jesus to come in the glory of the Father. And so that story is among Buddhists and particularly among Muslims. We don't have time for it. Thank you so much for your patience. God bless you.